Hey everyone, welcome to the greatest Access tutorial ever, where we cover anything Microsoft Access. My name's Jeremy. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining Greatest Access tutorial ever. I'm Jeremy, and today we're going to be covering domain functions in VBA, which are ultra useful. This is an intermediate course, meaning you should know at least a little simple VBA and SQL. So let's carry on, and we'll look at the single slide we have, and then we'll look at solutions. So the problem is this: how do we get results of a SQL query into a variable we can then use in VBA? So maybe we know how to write the SQL. For instance, let's look up or select a field from a table with a where statement, but how do we get that into a variable? Well, one way to do it is a domain function. So for example, I want to message box the user there are X records in table colors. How do I get that X into a variable? Well, it's called domain function. So let's look at the first one, which is also probably one of the most useful ones, which is DLOOKUP. So here we have, I wrote just a test subroutine called test DLOOKUP. I have a variable S model name. It is a string indicated by that. I could have also done this, same thing, but I could also make it a variant, but I want to be very specific and I want to do a string. And I set that variable S model equals DLOOKUP and table car models. Just in case you're unaware of what table car models looks like, I just have this sample table sitting over here. So this is what table car models looks like. So now let's go back to the code. Okay, so DLOOKUP car model, table car models, ID equals 5. So this is what we're looking up. The domain, this can be a table or a query, and an optional where filter. This is equivalent to writing this in SQL. Select car model from table car models where ID equals 5. So if we run this module, test DLOOKUP, now ignore that. Oop, oop, oop.
4 hours later.
There we go. Model name is Camry. Ignore this for right now. So let's look at a query that matches this. So this is equivalent to, if I do a test DLOOKUP and I do in design, what the hell? Oh, there it is. Design mode. There we go. Here we have it. So we have a table car models. I looked up table car model where ID equals 5. Here's a shot of the actual SQL. Access likes to use a plethora of parentheses, so you can kind of ignore those and that. But this is what this looks like. But again, even if you run this, you don't have the variable. Like how do you get this value into a variable? You can run the query, but how do you get that? Well, that's what DLOOKUP is for. Now you have to be careful. Here's a bad example here. If your where statement is not very good, then you're just going to get the first thing that the table gives you. So for instance, let's go back to table car models. We said on this filter, select the ID of car models where the car model is not civic. Well, you have a bunch of IDs that are not civic, so it's just going to throw the first one at you. It might be 2, it might be something else. You're not guaranteed, so make sure you have a good where statement. Okay, now we're going to decount, which is another useful one. Here's how decount works. Again, we have a long. This is indicated by the ampersand. Just think of it as, oh, that's a really long character to write. Okay, well, that's a long variable. And we set that long variable equal to decount star table colors, again, the domain, cost, and then an optional where statement. Now, in decount land, you can use this star. In SQL land, you cannot, at least for Access, you cannot use that star for a count. So if I go over here to test decount and I look at the design, I cannot double click that star and do an aggregate count statement on it. I have to select ID. So that's the primary key, no big deal. And then we've got our where statement over here that we're not showing. Let's look at the SQL real quick just to prove to you this is how the SQL would work. This is how you would do it in VBA. You would say a long color count or whatever your variable is, star, exactly. And then we're going to run it, test decount, number of colors that are above 98 cents is 5. If we run this SQL over here, count of ID 5. Same exact thing. Now let's go to our next one, which is dsum. Say we want to add up a numeric value. This is not the same as count. Count is just counting records. Sum is summing, obviously, math. Sometimes we get confused on that. So I have this is a currency variable here, and I set that currency variable dsum cost per ounce table colors. I didn't put a where statement there. And so that is the same as doing this in SQL. So let's jump over to our dsum SQL design view. That is the same as doing this right here. This is what the SQL, wait for the editor to load up. There we go. That is basically the same as that, but we have it in code that we can use as a variable. So now let's run test dsum. It's $10.54. Let's run this SQL, $10.54. So again, this is how we get this into a variable that we can use in other parts of code. Now we're going to look at min and max together just because, why not? So I again have two currency variables. I set one equal to the dmax of cost per ounce, one to the dmin, and then I debug and print that. Now again, this doesn't have to be a table, this is the domain. So I also did cost max of what is in my query inventory, which is my inventory of vehicles awaiting painting. So let's run this, and we'll see paint cost. The maximum paint cost is $167 per ounce. The minimum paint cost is $32, and the inventory right now, the most expensive car to paint, is $1.12 per ounce. Now you may notice I'm using this function here. This is a custom function I wrote, so let's jump to that real quick, just so I can show you what that is. Let's go to single mode. That was just a simple function to format a numeric value as currency. I don't have to do that when I'm inserting this variable into a table, but when I do debug, even though it's a currency variable, it doesn't print it as currency, it prints it as just a number. So I like to see it as a number value. So this is just a very simple function that first will test if the passed value is numeric. If it is not, it's going to return an error and then exit the function. Otherwise, it's going to format that numeric passed value as currency. Now, here is a giant warning. Whenever you do IsNumeric, you never say, never do this. For whatever reason, I've had Access lock up when I use the IsNumeric pval. I have to do a variable first and then set that variable equal to IsNumeric pval. This has caused me Access to lock up in the past. I'm not sure why that happened, so don't do that. When you do IsNumeric, just have you can have a Boolean. There we go. I should have explicitly said isnum is a Boolean. Bisnum is equal to IsNumeric pval. And so then you can test isnum. You don't test this expression directly. Again, that's my experience. Maybe they've changed that in newer versions of Access. I'm running 3.6.5 now, but I don't wish to test that. So anyway, that's what that fcur is. It's just a simple function. So let's get back out of here. So now let's run test. Oh, I've already run test min max. There we go. Let's look at the equivalent query over here. We're going to look at the design. I just chose the min and the max of the same field. And if I run it, 32,167, that jives with this, 32,167. I didn't write a query that looks at query inventory, so we don't have that. Let's look at the equivalent SQL. Here it is. Select min as whatever, max as whatever. So again, these domain functions are very easy ways to get your variables for certain queries. And now the last one that I use occasionally, there are other domains, but they're kind of strange. I never use those, and honestly, I rarely use average. Again, I have a currency variable. I set it to d-average of cost per ounce, and again, I didn't use a where statement. So now let's run test d-average. Average cost is 96 cents for my paint. What if we go over here and look at the query for this? This is how you would design that query. Cost per ounce is, again, some average. If we look at the SQL, wait for the SQL to load, that's what the SQL looks like, 96 cents per ounce. And that is it. That is domain queries. They're ultra super useful. We'll be using them as I work on the full project videos. Thanks so much. Again, thanks so much for subscribing and liking. If you haven't, please make sure you ring the bell so you know when these new videos are out.